Assalamu alaikum students. Let's start our today's lesson with the name of Allah, the most merciful and the most beneficent. Today's talk of the day is when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. It is a proverbial phrase used to encourage optimism and a positive attitude in the face of adversity or misfortune. Lemons here suggest sourness or difficulty in life, and making lemonade is turning them into something positive or desirable. So, to put this in simpler words, one should always make the best out of difficult situations. So, if you look at it, class 8, this proverb is very much similar to the one that we studied in the last class. That is, every cloud has a silver lining. As both of these proverbs suggest and promote optimism. Speaking of the silver lining, which is also the title of our story, written by Dr. Chamal Nahal, let's start our today's lesson. So today our core focus will be on discussing and learning the meanings of all the new vocabulary words of the story in detail. And again, class 8, you are advised to find a peaceful and quiet place so you can fully concentrate and thoroughly understand whatever is being discussed in the lesson. So it's now time to grow your vocabulary. So class 8, here we have the list of all those words that you saw underlined in the previous lesson. So students, brace yourself to learn a ton of new interesting vocabulary words. The first one amongst them is assess. The word assess means to judge or to determine or measure something. Now class 8, if you remember, the word assess, the author refers to in the very beginning that it is difficult to assess the range and quality of human emotions. So by this he means that it is difficult to judge or to determine the emotions that a person is going through. Next is grief. The word grief means sorrow, anguish, or pain. And the simplest synonym for the word grief is sadness. Then we have blissfully, which means joyfully, happily, or delightfully. Next we have humdrum. Humdrum is something which is dull and boring or monotonous, which does not change. The next word we have is lack. Lack means not having enough, something which is not sufficient enough or is deficient in. Then we have din. The word is din, which means noise. The next word we have cuisine. Cuisine is basically a different style of cooking. Like we have Chinese, continental, these are all different sorts of cuisines. Then we have correspond. Correspond, it means was similar to or in accordance with, something which is matched with something else. The next word we have is swardi. Swardi means dark in color or somebody who is dark complexioned. Now the word swardi is used for Mr. Ahad, which means that he was a dark complexioned person. Then we have bony. Bony is somebody who is very thin, very weak, so thin that the bones stick out, that they can be seen. Then we have looked after. Looked after means to take care of or to attend to something or someone. And the term looked after is used for, do you remember? Yes, Mrs. Ahad looked after the narrator, that is Mr. Nadeem. Now class 8, have another good look at the slide in front of you. We've just discussed the meanings of these words. Now you'll be seeing certain images on the screen and I would like you to guess which word the image represents. So let's have a look at the first image. What do you think? What is it? You just studied. Think. Recall. There was something about food. Or rather cooking. So yes, different styles of cooking. What word is it? Cuisine. Wonderful. Good. So the next image is, let's see. Now, what do you think? What is this? Rather, who is this? Somebody with what kind of complexion does he have? Let's see. Is he a fair person? No. He's rather dark, isn't he? So, what is that kind of person called? Somebody who has dark complexion? Yes, wonderful. Swardi. Excellent, class 8th. Next, we have. Now, what kind of a person is this? What features does he have? Doesn't it look a little too thin? What was the other word that we just studied? Yes, yes. Good, bony. Let's move to the next slide now. Now, the first word on this slide is luggage. So, we all know, we all have an idea what luggage is. Luggage is basically suitcases or bags in which to pack personal belongings. Okay? They are known as your luggage. Now, the next word is at my ease, which means in a relaxed mood or feeling comfortable. So, if you remember, Mrs. Ahad made Mr. Nadeem feel comfortable by offering him coffee and by talking to him casually about his visit. Then we have slightly built. Slightly built is somebody who is very thin and has a skinny body. So, who in the story was slightly built? Although Mr. Ahad was thin and bony, but he wasn't slightly built, remember? He was a huge, swarthy man. So, who else was there who was slightly built? Yes, the little girl named Maheen. Good. So, now we have the word settee, and if you remember, Maheen was standing behind a settee. So, what is a settee basically? It is a long seat with a back or without a back also, a couch or a sofa. Then we have charming. Charming is somebody who's attractive, amiable, polite, who has a pleasant personality altogether. And who in the story was charming? Yes, Mrs. Ahad was. And if we remember rightly, the statement that was used for her by the author is that she was one of the most charming hostesses one could find anywhere. Then the word is beckoned. Beckon means to make gestures with the hand. So if you beckon to someone, you signal to them to come to you. And in the story, Mr. Nadeem beckoned Maheen to come towards him. Then there was an awkward pause. So awkward pause means uncomfortable silence. So when in the story does this awkward pause take place? It happened when Maheen ran out of the room with tears in her eyes when Mr. Nadeem tried to be friendly with her. Now the word frowning means making facial expression of disapproval or specifically sad face. When this awkward pause happened, the parents were frowning with a painful look on their faces. And the word apologetically means regretfully, in a sorry manner. So when this happened, when this uncomfortable situation took place, Mr. Ahad apologetically told Mr. Nadeem about the girl, that she was deaf and dumb. So he was feeling sorry for what had happened. Then there is the word gasped, which means to catch one's breath with open mouth in astonishment or to inhale. So this happened to Mr. Nadeem when Mr. Ahad told him that Maheen was deaf and dumb. Now get ready to associate the images that you're about to see with the words that you've just studied. First image is, well, that's easy, isn't it? What is it? Yes, this is luggage. Good. Next we have, so what does this image tell you? Yes, take your time. Good. Isn't she slightly built just like Maheen? Good. Next we have, that's easy. Yes, it is a settee or a sofa or a couch. The word that you just studied about this picture is settee. Next is, What kind of personality does this lady have? What word comes to mind? Yes, very good. She is a charming lady. Good, charming. She seems pretty, kind, pleasant, good. Then we have this image. Now, what are they trying to do? Yes, they are beckoning. They very good. The word that we studied was beckoned. Good, class 8. Next we have what happened to these poor people? Have you noticed their faces? What expressions do they have on their face? Yes, good. They are frowning. They're making a sad or depressed face. They have sad expressions on their face. Very good. And this one is really interesting. What is happening to them? What expressions do they have? What exactly are they doing? Yes, good. They are gasping. They are gasping. Yes. As in the story, Mr. Nadeem gasped. Wonderful. To take a deep breath. Good. With amazement or shock. Very good. Now, the first word on the slide is muttering, and it means to mumble or to speak quietly. It means that you speak in such a low tone that you're not easily heard. Next, we have forwardness, which means boldness or overconfidence. And in the story, Mr. Nadeem felt ashamed at his forwardness with the child. Then the word vaguely means in an uncertain manner, unclearly, and it also means to some degree, but not to a very large degree, as in to some extent. Then we have run into, which means to meet somebody unexpectedly. Or, in other words, when we say to bump into somebody. The word fascinated means captivated, spellbound, or attracted by something. Withdrawing means retreating, pull back, or to take out. For example, you withdraw money from the account. That is, you take out money from the bank account. Then agony means pain, distress, or anguish. Then we have lengthy explanations, which means more details. Inquisitive means curious, nosy, or prying. Inquisitive people like finding out about things. And then disability is a physical disorder. Then we have queries, which means inquiries or questions. Now let's have a look at this picture. What does this picture suggest? What kind of people are they? Think, recall. Yes, they are inquisitive as they want to know about things. They are searching for something, trying and wanting to find out. And now this picture tells you about? Yes, disability. Very good. Next we have haltingly, which means nervously or hesitatingly. The parents answered the queries of the guests haltingly. Then we have anguish, which means deep pain. Gravely means grimly, seriously, or painfully. Then we have aghast, which means horrified, shocked, stunned, and surprised. The next one is pastime. Pastime is an activity or a hobby. Things that you do in your spare time. The next word is crudely, meaning inaccurately or roughly. Confined means limited to or restricted. So all of Mahin's communications were confined to hand gestures. Next we have fleeting, which means transitory, momentary, short-lived, or quick. Torture means agony, suffering, or pain. Then the word is humiliation, which means insult. It is the feeling of being humiliated, embarrassed, or ashamed. And the last one on the slide is ambiguous, which means obscure, of double meaning, or something which is unclear. Now have a look at this picture. What is the feeling that the people in these three images are going through? Yes, definitely they are feeling humiliation. Good. Now, the first word that we have on this slide is obvious, which means evident or easily understood, something which is very clear. Next is compatible, which means suited to, in accord with, or suitably fit. The next word we have is deigned, which means thought fit to do something. So in this story, Mr. David did not even deign to reply adequately to the questions put by the Ahads. Next we have emphatically, which means forcibly expressing with feelings and stress. Next is incoherent, meaning not easily followed or understood, confused or unclear. And in the story, the parents broke into incoherent statements of profuse apologies once they realized that Mr. David was deaf and dumb. Nonchalantly means unexcitedly, calmly, and coolly, in a rather casual manner. The word profuse means lavish or plentiful. So if you offer profuse apologies or thanks, you apologize or thank someone a lot, as did the Ahads in the story to Mr. David. Then we have self conscious, meaning conscious of oneself or being shy. Trepidation means alarm, fear, or nervousness. The word ruse means action intended to deceive or a trick. The last word on the slide, intimate, means close or friendly. So when we say they are intimate friends, it means they are very close friends. Coming to the next slide, the first word we have is excursion, which means a trip or a visit. It is a short journey specially taken for pleasure or enjoyment. Next is tweed suit, which is a suit made of a rough woolen fabric, which is the suit that Mr. David was wearing when he first arrived at the Ahad's guest house. Drooping means bent or dropping. If you remember, the suit that Mr. David was wearing had drooping shoulders. Our next word, unkempt, means disheveled, shabby, messy, or dirty. The phrase shrugged his shoulders means raised and contracted his shoulders. The word disconcerted means confused, disturbed, or upset. And so in the story, the Ahads were disconcerted by Mr. David's behavior. Our next word, infer, means deduce, conclude, or to understand. The word arrogance means conceit, haughtiness, or superiority. It is the offensive display of superiority or self-importance, showing overbearing pride. The word impending means about to happen. So an impending event is one that is going to happen very soon. Apprehensive means anxious, worried, fearful, or afraid. And the last one on this slide is reclining, which means lie back in a relaxed position. Now let's have a look at the first image for this slide. What does this picture suggest? Yes, it's very easy. Good, excursion. All of these people are going on some sort of excursion, whether it be a fishing trip, a visit to a museum, and so on. Next we have, it's easy too, isn't it? Yes, it is a tweed suit. Good. Moving to the next image. This shows, yes, it shows drooping shoulders. Very good. Something which is drooping. Yes, good. What we have next is very interesting. Now, what is he doing? Take your time. Think about it. Yes, he's shrugging his shoulders. Very good. Now, let's have a look at the next image. This person seems to be disconcerted. He seems confused and a little upset. Very good. Now, what does this image tell you? What kind of position are these two people in? Yes, they both are reclining. Very good. Now we have pierce the air, which means force through the air, cut or pass through. And in the story, the shrill animal-like laughter of Mahin pierce the air. Next, we have digest the news, which means to understand the news. So, in the story, it took the Ahads and Mr. Nadeem time to understand that Mr. David was deaf and dumb too. Then we have apologies, which means requests for forgiveness or sorry. Gestures means movements of part of the body, particularly hands. So Maheen used gestures with her hands to communicate with people. The next word, slightest, means least. Then we have outlined, which means to give the brief description, which Mr. David gave to the Ahads about the plans for the betterment of Maheen. And the last one on the slide we have carefree, which means to be free from anxiety or responsibility. Now, class 8, what does this picture suggest? It's very easy. Yes, these are the gestures. Very good. Now we have evergreen, which means blossomed or fresh. Then we have the word gnawing, which means chewing or eating. Next we have snatched, which means stolen. Gracefully means thankfully. The word acknowledged means accepted. Recommended means advised or suggested. And in the story, if you remember, the author or narrator's friend recommended him the Ahad's guest house. Next we have isolated, which means apart, private, something which is far from other things. It also means separated from other persons or things, or is alone. Then we have limbs, which means arms or legs. The word ease means comfortable. Avoid means to hide from or staying away. Blushed is the pink coloring. When you blush, your face becomes redder than usual because you are ashamed or embarrassed. Our next word, respond, means answer. And the last word on the slide, sighing, means to breathe out. Now let's have a look at the pictures. The first one is, yes, it is evergreen. These trees are fresh and blossomed. They are evergreen. Very good. A tree or a bush that has green leaves all year long. Then the next image shows, what are the animals doing? They are, very good, they are gnawing at something. Gnaw. Gnaw means to chew at something. Very good. Now class 8, the image that is in front of you, does it remind you of a statement used in the story in the beginning? Can you recall what the statement was? So the line goes, those with smiling, evergreen faces may have worm-like griefs gnawing at their existence. So I have chosen these two images to make you understand the meaning of the statement. As you can see, the apple on your right hand side seems really healthy and fine from outside. But on the left hand side, when you take a bite out of this beautiful and fine looking apple, what do you find inside? A worm that has been gnawing and destroying the apple from inside. This is what this line suggests, that some people who look happy from outside may be destroyed from inside because of the pains and hardships they've gone through. Our next image shows, yes, snatching. Very good. To snatch something. Very good. Things are being stolen in the picture. Very good. Now next, what do we have here? Yes, the two houses or the two places are isolated. Very good. They're far away from other things. They're not surrounded by any other place, but they are all alone in the whole area. So they are isolated. Very good. Next image is very easy. It shows the limbs. Very good. The arms and the legs are the limbs. Very good. Then we have, what is happening? The girls are blushing. Very good. Because of embarrassment or of shyness, they are blushing. Then we have this image, and they are, if you look at it closely, what are they doing? They are very good. They are sighing. Now, class A, there's a difference between sighing and gasping. When you gasp, you take in a deep breath. And when you sigh, you let it out. You breathe out. Okay? Good. The first word on the slide we have calamity, which means disaster or tragedy. Then we have self-pity. Self-pity means to feel sorry for oneself. Then we have cater, which means to help or to provide. Faintly means slightly. Utter means to say. Sensation is a feeling. Duly means rightly. Acquaintance is a friend. Spared means to be relieved from or freed from something. Plea is a request. Hospitality means friendliness. It is a friendly, welcoming behavior towards guests or people. And then we have consent, which means approval. So if you give your consent to do something, you give someone permission to do it. Next we have misery, which means pain or bad news. It is great unhappiness. Misery is also the way of life and unpleasant living conditions of people who are very poor. Then we have sympathetic. It means concerned or pitying. So when you're sympathetic to someone who is in a bad situation, you are kind to them and show that you understand their feelings. Next is relieved, which means relaxed. Next we have temporarily, which means for a short time. The next word porter means one who carries luggage. Next is clad. Clad means to be dressed in. Then we have sparkling. Sparkling is something shiny or glowing. Vitality is the energy or full of life. Liveliness, that is. Presume is to guess or suppose. Nodded means to move head upward and downward. Brief means short. Intended is planned, and coincided means to happen at the same time. Now the first image that we have for this slide is this man. Who do you think this man is? Good, he is a porter. And now, what is the gentleman doing? With his head, yes, nodding. He is nodding. Very good. Good. Now the first word on the slide is addressed, which means marked. As in the story, the letter was marked by the name Mr. David, and so it was meant for Mr. David. Then we have the word pursed, which means to press together. So Mr. David pursed his lips and shrugged his shoulders when Mrs. Ahad asked him if he would like to have a hot bath immediately or tea first. Then our next word implying means meaning or hinting. It also means to indicate or suggest without being explicitly stated. Preferences means first choice. Then the word pride means ego. Adequately is properly. Darted out means to run out. Instance is a moment. Veranda is a porch. Confronted means faced. The next word we have is amazement, which means confusion. It is a feeling you have when something surprises you very much. Then we have queer, which means strange. And then the last word is gratitude, which means thankfulness. Now class 8, have a look at this picture. What is the lady doing? She is very good. She is pursing her lips. Good. Then we have, as you can see, it's a veranda. Very good. So it is a roofed platform along the outside of a house. Good. And class 8, with this we move towards our last slide of today's lesson with the first word convey. which means to pass. Then we have render, which means to contribute or present. And then the last word is people's means, which means people's reach. So Mr. David in the story was there in Pakistan to render his services for the disabled people. And then they talked about schools for such disabled people, which were beyond most people's means, which was beyond most people's reach. So class 8, it is now time for your homework. So read the complete story once again, this time with the purpose of comprehension. Make use of all the meanings learned in today's lesson. I hope students that you find this lesson helpful and of use. So that's all for today. Till the next time, take care and Allah Hafiz.